And welcome to PM Express. It is said that when your friend's chin is on fire or beard is on fire, what you do is you fetch a bucket of water and put it next to yours, because you don't know when yours will catch fire. Indeed, if there's political crisis in Togo, Ghana should be wary. We are neighbors, we are very close, and whatever concerns Togo should concern us. It is in our interest to make sure that Togo is stable. And so with all the political crisis that's brewing in Togo, the president of Ghana went there today to meet both sides and try to mediate to bring peace there. And hopefully they will find peace. It's quite technical, We want to find out from a governance perspective what should be the best or good decision for Togo to take. During the conversation, we shall also look at voting for MMDCEs, which the president has mentioned in the State and Nation address. Is this something that's going to, completely support the higher government, or completely be a distraction for the higher government? With all our vindictiveness and you bite me, I bite you kind of politics, would such a system work with us? We shall look at all that, and when I come back, I have just the man who knows a thing or two about governance. My name is Nana Ansakwa, the fourth chief of Little Republic of Akomedu Masan, your favorite host. Don't you move, I am coming straight back.
And it is important that it is the Togolese themselves, and not any outside forces, that will determine the future of your country. It's extremely important for all of us to recognize that the destinies of our nations are in our own hands, and that therefore whatever emerges out of this dialogue represents the solutions that the Togolese people are looking for. What therefore is required of us on this occasion? It is that for all those who are assembled here, recognize that in a dialogue, the spirit of accommodation, the spirit of compromise has to be at the very forefront of the preoccupations of everyone. Why? Because the national interest of Togo demands it. And that has to be the overriding concern of everybody who will be participants in this dialogue. The national interest of the people of Togo. Their desire for a better life, their desire to live in security, their desire to live in freedom, their desire to live in a state governed by the rule of law, the principles of democratic accountability. Those are the desires that the political actors assembled here are meant to fulfill.
Well, thank you very much for staying. That was the president in Togo today, meeting both functions after 6 months of, agitation. It's gotten to this where they're all coming onto the table to see if they can broker peace and understanding. With me in the studio with full peace and understanding is Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, Executive Director, Institute of Democratic Governance. Hi there, Doc. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And always grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
Doc, the Togo crisis, is there a stalemate, if they call it, where the opposition is saying, now listen, if we're going to fall back onto our constitution, we don't want the president to be running. Let's kick him out till we start. And he's saying, well, if you bring it in, it's a clean sheet. Let me go and try my luck and see. I mean, where do they go from here?
I think so far, the Togolese have been in a political crisis for a long time, from Faure's father, Iadema, and over the years they have been talking, and they've tried various approaches to accommodate the opposition, to cede space to them. But it's been, no matter how they've turned it around, it is truly, they end up with the same results, that the Yedemas are in charge. And this time around, I think the opposition has mobilized and has demonstrated it has national support. I think something has to give. And to my mind, well, it's a good thing the president is mediating, but I think the good thing would be if Ejadema, President Faure, who served about 4 terms already, would step down in the interest of the country and give them a new chance. You know, his party can contest. He himself doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, what more would he achieve? Haven't had all the time. So I think it's a time for a leader to sacrifice in the interest, to make that ultimate sacrifice. It's not the first time it's happened in various countries, and that led to peace. If you take, for instance, Liberia, Charles Taylor, they were in negotiations here in Accra, and the opposition made it clear that he should go. If he leaves, there would be peace. And the President Akufo then and others were mediating. They talked to him, and he says, well, if indeed I'm the obstacle, I'm the stumbling block to peace, then I would withdraw, pull myself out of this. And he did that. And then granted asylum, and whatever happened, and where he is now. So it is one classic case where a leader decided that for peace to occur in their country and a new chapter opened, he had to pay the price, and he did that. And look at where Liberia is. Still struggling, but they've had relative peace, and they are beginning to repair their country. If you look at another situation which wasn't exactly like Liberia, no civil war and so on, the late President Nyerere, when it was just a change from the system, the Ujamaa system he built, and he felt, you know, his villagization policy, socialism, social democracy was what his people wanted, and he wanted to deal with the problems of inequality, and create great opportunities for everybody. But the economy wasn't playing ball. And when it became so obvious that the only way to save his country was that the World Bank and the IMF had to move in, and in the 80s, then it became also a question, in the early 90s, it became a question of shifting to opening up, liberalizing, and letting political opposition thrive, you know, competitive multi-party elections and so on. He said, look, all my life I'd worked for my country. The system I set up, I believe, was the best. But this new system, I do not think that is what would deliver what. But since you people believe in it, well, I will step down and for you to move on. So there have been cases in history where leaders have, you know, put the interests of their people, the stability, the peace, and creating conditions for them to reach the next level of their aspirations, have had to do that. But if you insist that, well, if you restore or bring back the old constitution with term limits, then I have to start all over again. Then I'm not sure it's the national interest you're pursuing. For instance, in Burundi, that's the case. They instituted term limits, and the man said, well, since you've instituted term limits, then I'm eligible because what I served cannot count. It was under a different constitution. And since then, Burundi has had no peace. It's in a worse situation than it could ever imagine.
I don't know if you've had engagement with similar leaders. Is it that strong belief that, look, if not me, nobody can do it?
Not necessarily. Sometimes it's security. Okay, you know, presidents sometimes front for different groups and, you know, powers. And there is always a power struggle. And when they serve as a force for stability, mostly it could be they are holding their own various camps and competing in check and so on. And the consequence has always been for those who say to themselves, what happens when they leave? You know, what's going to happen to us? And sometimes then they start the active lobbying and prevail, don't go anywhere, we are with you, and so on and so forth. So sometimes it's not the individuals themselves who really want to, but they are captive to powerful forces, and they do not know what the consequences would be. So there's a great deal of insecurity. I mean, you've been in power for 50 years, you've had the best of everything, you are in control, and suddenly your leaving could mean that, you know, they are uncertain. Change, you know, is not always managed well, and people have real anxieties and real uncertainties about the future. And it is it is part of what is playing out, so that you would have a situation where indeed in the negotiations with the skillful, you know, work of the mediators and so on, they might be able to spot out what exactly is the source of the insecurity that he might feel, his family and so on, and what assurances would have to be given, and what trade-offs will be done. You know, in Kenya, for example, President Arap Moi, you know, in 2002, you know, when they wanted him out, they were quite determined to do whatever because he was accused of all sorts of crimes and so on. But the Kenyans decided in their supreme wisdom that, look, leave him. We will not go after him. He has very powerful forces around him. If his peace would be what guarantees theirs, let's leave him, but let's focus on the future and what more we can do to change our country and create conditions for people to realize their aspirations and so on. So they left him. They didn't prosecute him. They didn't arrest him, and he's there and so on. So various trade-offs, you know, are made to bring about peace. It's never a one-sided thing, especially if it's not going to be resolved on the battleground. And even where there's civil war, you know, it doesn't always end up with the victor having everything. You know, they still have to negotiate a new constitution, and its power is always shared, whether it's democracy or weapons that are at stake or negotiated settlements.
I mean, that's my next question. An exit clause. Do you think there should be a big exit clause in there? Look, you're not going to be tried. You know, take this lump sum, go, you know, go in peace and sin no more, and stuff like that. Should it come to play, or the law is the law? If we find you guilty, we're going to come back after you?
Sometimes it's not even the money. It's the freedom. Okay, could I live in this country with you and nobody will come after me? Dignity. Would I be respected as the president? Would my act of exiting be rewarded in a way that you also give me my peace? You know, these are the key things.
Invited to
values. Not necessarily. Sometimes you not see them, but to the extent that nobody goes hunting them and threatening them. And, you know, in Charles Taylor's case, you know, the ECOWAS negotiated and they said, well, we'll give you asylum, we'll protect you and so on. And then look at what happened. You know, they couldn't protect him. And that then makes it difficult for other leaders to accept that they could exit. But when they've stayed in for so long, it's important that democracy is gaining grounds, is changing. People are expressing their wishes and their desires and their aspirations in more forceful terms. And when they find that the system does not work for them, you find out they'll mobilize Faure, you know, the way he was chased out and so on. So there is always a way in which we should look at the negotiation. If it's not the barrel of the gun where they're shooting and destroying everything, then you have to trade off. And trade-off is important. And it always has to do with security, it has to do with peace, it has to do with dignity for family and so on, everything. Sometimes it's painful, given experiences people have had with them whilst they were in power, or the man who they are negotiating with. But for peace, you've got to trade off something and then change the system to be more accommodating and more inclusive of everybody else.
I mean, but is it in Togolese case, is it a case of just go and let me come because you've been there too long, or is that, look, you're not performing, this guy can outperform you? What's the big story? I mean,
I think the opposition found an effective message that resonated with many, because you cannot deny that it's a fact. That 50 years is a long time, and they are the ones who have been there and so on. But also, Togo has had relatively, you know, law and order situation, relative peace. Now and then there has been turbulence. Faure has tried to make peace with various other, especially the opposition, you know. But I think the fact is Togolese are not having their aspirations met. You know, poverty is real, unemployment is high. Lome looks beautiful and clean and all that, but beyond that, I mean, living conditions or standards. People have aspirations, and I think, you know, they see Ghana next door with all our problems. Togo and others see us. Yes, they look up to us, and they think, why is it that Ghana is doing so well and we are? And ultimately, I think what the opposition has done, since they've tried everything, but they are always outwitted, you know. I think they found a message that resonated and could mobilize that, okay, if that is the case. But it is really the strategy they've adopted to mobilize support, much more than it being the sole reason that, no, there are economic and social and political issues of justice. I mean, the Yadema regime, especially from his father's time, was brutal, you know. So I think Faure hasn't been that, but clearly the army is one of the forces. In fact, negotiations with Yadema is also indirectly negotiations with the army, because army is one of the forces backing him. Wow. That is how they've set it up. Yes. So these are difficult things, but the choice is you have to cede power, you have to give space for people, everybody with a right to that country, to also find space to express their will and feel that they can use the existing system and the constitution to pursue their aspirations. If they find it so hopeless, then there's going to be a problem. Then, of course, you have France, you know, the power, you know, in the background. So negotiations with Yadema ultimately would be negotiations also with France, whether France would accept that this change would occur, and how it feels its interests will be protected or, you know, jeopardized and so on. So it's a multi-layered conversation, dialogue. It's not just the opposition and Faure, but the forces behind them, and what trade-offs can be made so that everybody feels there is space within Togo for us to pursue aspirations.
Our president has said, look, he's Francophilia, French of
yes, he speaks.
I mean, does it make him a strategic, or give him an advantage in the negotiations? He's quite close to France, you know, as a friend.
Well, definitely the language is good. He's able to communicate with them, and the more you speak a language, the more the people feel you're closer to them, and so not remote. And it makes it easier for him to engage in one-on-one conversations, and, you know, that's true. But his stature as Ghana's president, you know, his own knowledge of the conflict and his own political weight and aspirations and skills. He's been foreign minister. So there's a whole lot that counts. And of course, it's Ghana. In West Africa, for many countries, many of the small countries, I mean, Ghana is still the model they look at. Many aspire to be like Ghana, although we have a whole lot of... we can complain all night, you know. We don't see our achievements, but we've also made huge and significant achievements. So they look to Ghana, you know. I remember once in Monrovia, one of the politicians said to me, very highly placed, that, you know, Ghana, we look up to you, you know, your economy, your politics, your education, this. And so sometimes when it's like you are going to explode, it really creates a whole lot of problems for us, you know, because the hope is and so that is what it is. And I think with that a kind of experience and aspiration and so on, and his own vision, I believe that they will listen to him. They will not see him as a person with a certain interest to drive. You have to be credible as a mediator, as a peace broker, you know, and they would also look at the picture. What are you doing in your country that, and can we rely on you? And I think his influence goes beyond Ghana. They know that probably he has a good rapport with, you know, the French president. And not only that, there are other leaders. The EU is a very important factor in Togolese politics, not even in the economic development of the country, with sanctions in place, aid cut, and so on. Who is the credible leader who would persuade them that if a deal is struck, the EU should back it, and so on? You need somebody who has that credibility, and I think it puts the president in a very good stead.
The issue of people looking up to Ghana, I remember in the height of doing so, I met a family at the mall that got introduced, and the issue about, Doomsday came, and they didn't know what they were talking about. They had come from Nigeria, and they was wondering why we were complaining about. They had come for holidays.
It's like we're spoiled.
Yeah. They had literally come for holiday.
Yeah,
more enjoying.
And we are complaining.
Yeah,
in fact, some do think really that we complain a lot. Yeah, given what they think within the same time we've achieved. But except that the fact is, since the independence, our comparators have not been our neighbors. The world we have, the development we've gone through, the leaders we've had, and so on. Our aspiration is to see ourselves as South Korea or Malaysia, and so on. But relatively, it is still the fact that there is greater admiration, and also that gives us a certain soft power. It means that they listen. Where we want to go or what we are saying and so on. And I think Ghana has done well in not truly meddling in a lot of taking sides or interfering and so on. Ghana has been involved in Togo for a long time, but this is the first time it's come out openly, the president. Oh. Yeah, but the last elections and the confusion in Ghana was quite involved in bringing about peace and, and there are relatives and relations, that. So we are... I'm happy we're playing this role, and I hope they will find an amicable solution. But the leaders sometimes must make the ultimate sacrifice. And in this case, it's not death; it's seat power with all that you have. But they will have to negotiate the terms.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. That but probably an unfair question. But if I put you on the negotiation table, what would you say? Look, go, and I'll guarantee you freedom.
Oh, it could be that, but if he wants to live in Togo and I'm from Ghana, I can't guarantee that. I would rather negotiate with his own people to respect that deal and uphold it. Because you ought to hold the deal, you ought to respect it, you have to keep it. And that breeds confidence and trust in the system, But it's a question of forgiving, It's a question of, because whatever atrocities and injustices have been committed over the decades, cannot be, fully, restored and so on. They've happened. So they will appeal to people's good senses and conscience and love, that overrides everything else, and God, and so there is so many things. But at the end of the day, it has to be a fair negotiation that leads to change, that the Togolese feel we have this behind us and now we can move forward. But nobody knows what lies ahead.
Well, that was the Togolese part of the conversation. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're coming straight back to Ghana, and we're looking at, do you want to, vote for your DC or your MMDC? And, there could be an MPP government and an NDC, district chief executive. Is he just going to be there playing booga, as they say, or is he going to be there raising his game to match up? That's what we do. We're coming straight back, and when we come back, I'll put the numbers out so that you can send in your WhatsApp, and I'll read your comments too. Don't go.